It's 5:47 p.m. You just walked through the door, and your partner, or your kid, or your roommate, or even just your own body is asking for you. Not the version that closed the deal, managed the meeting, held the team together. You. And somewhere between the car and the kitchen, something in you went tight. Maybe you snapped at something small. Maybe you went completely flat and unreachable. Maybe you scanned the room like it was a problem to solve and not a life to come home to. And later, maybe in the shower, maybe lying in bed, you thought, why do I keep doing this? I love these people. I want to be here. What is wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. Something is happening to you. And today, we're going to go all the way into it. The biology, the relational cost, and the protocol that actually changes it. Stay with me. Welcome to The Regulated Life. I'm Erica Carter-Folk, transformational coach and nervous system educator. This is the podcast for the high-achieving, emotionally intelligent human who is quietly falling apart in spaces that matter the most. If that's you, you are in exactly the right place. Today is a Method Monday, which means we go deep. We're talking about something I call the armor paradox. And I want to promise you something before we begin. By the time we're done, you're going to understand not just what is happening, but why your nervous system runs this pattern, where it comes from, and what to do about it starting tonight. So let's go. Here's the paradox in one sentence. The same neural patterns that make you exceptional under pressure are actively dismantling your closest relationships. Not because they're bad patterns, not because something went wrong with you, because they're survival patterns. And survival patterns don't know when to stand down. I want you to really sit with that for a second. The hypervigilance, the urgency, the emotional suppression, the ability to hold yourself together in a high-stakes environment for 8, 10, 12 hours without flinching. Those are adaptive. They worked. In many environments, they still work beautifully. The problem is they don't have an off switch built in. And nobody told us we have to build one ourselves. Dr. James Pennebaker's decades of research on emotional suppression tell us something important. When we habitually hold back emotional expression, which is exactly what professional environments require, our bodies pay a measurable physiological cost. Cortisol stays elevated. Vagal tone decreases. The immune system is suppressed. And over time, that suppression doesn't just live at work. It becomes a default state, a baseline the nervous system returns to automatically. You stopped performing the armor. You became it. And that's what we're untangling today. Let's go into the nervous system science because I think it's where real change becomes possible. When we understand the biology, we stop fighting ourselves. We start working with the system instead. Your autonomic nervous system, the part responsible for regulating your heart rate, your breathing, your stress responses, your capacity for connection, is running constantly, below conscious awareness. It doesn't rest when you rest. It's always doing something. Dr. Stephen Porges, whose Polyvagal Theory has fundamentally changed how we understand human stress and connection, describes a process called neuroception. Neuroception is the nervous system's moment-to-moment, below-conscious threat scan. It's reading the environment, reading the faces of the people around you, reading your own internal body signals, and making continuous assessments of whether you're safe. And here's what's critical. Neuroception doesn't use logic. It doesn't read the clock. It doesn't know your 4 p.m. meeting ended and you're now in your driveway. It reads biological signals. And the biological signals of a high-performance workday, elevated cortisol, increased heart rate, jaw tension, scanning eyes, suppressed emotional expression, are the biological signals of sustained threat. So as far as your neuroceptive system is concerned, when you walk through the door at 6 p.m., the threat is still active. The armor is still necessary. The program is still running. This is what I call the threshold effect. The doorway to your home is not the neurological reset most of us assume it is. Without an intentional biological transition, without what I call biological consent, you bring the fight response, the freeze response, or the fawn response right across that threshold, into the kitchen, into the first conversation, into the emotional temperature of the entire evening. Now here's the layer that makes this profoundly relational, not just personal. Polyvagal theory introduces the concept of the ventral vagal system, the neurocircuitry associated with safety, connection, and genuine social engagement. When you're in ventral vagal, you can make soft eye contact. You can listen without scanning. You can be affected by the people around you in a good way. You can actually land in the room. When you're in sympathetic activation, which is where the armor lives, that ventral vagal circuitry is suppressed. The social engagement system is offline. You can still talk, and you can still function, and you can still go through all the motions of presence, but the quality of nervous system you're bringing to those interactions is not one that can co-regulate. It cannot offer safety because it doesn't feel safe itself. And the people in your home are reading that, not consciously, biologically. Dr. John Cacioppo's research on social and co-regulation shows us that human nervous systems are exquisitely tuned to read each other. We are wired at a level far below language to feel the state of the people in proximity to us. This is not emotional sensitivity. This is biology. Your body is constantly receiving and broadcasting nervous system signals. When you arrive armored, those signals travel. Your partner or your kids or the people you live alongside don't choose to respond to your state. Their nervous systems simply do. And the emotional temperature of the entire space gets set by what you walked in carrying. The armor doesn't just affect you. It becomes the atmosphere everyone else has to breathe. I want to add a layer here that I don't think is talked about enough because it's where real compassion enters the picture. For most high achievers, the armor didn't start at work. It started much earlier. The nervous system learns its default responses in childhood. In the first environments where we had to navigate threat, unpredictability, emotional volatility, or simply the demand to perform in order to be loved. For a lot of us, professional excellence wasn't just ambition, it was the strategy, the way we earned safety, the way we made ourselves acceptable, valuable, worth keeping. If you grew up in a home where emotions were dangerous, where you had to be small or competent or invisible or endlessly accommodating, your nervous system built armor early, long before the first performance review, long before the first high-stakes meeting. Work didn't create the armor. Work rewarded it and gave it a very sophisticated outfit. John Bowlby's attachment research and the decades of work that followed it show us that the nervous system patterns we develop in early relationships become the templates we bring to every relationship that follows. The way we learn to regulate or to survive without regulation in childhood becomes the wiring we're running on as adults. This isn't destiny. It's not a life sentence, but it is important context. Because when we understand that the armor was originally a survival tool, that a child built it because they needed to, we stop trying to shame it away. We start doing the actual work of updating the system, letting the nervous system know that the original threat is no longer present, that different tools are available now. That's what this work is. Well, let's talk about what it looks like across the 3 nervous system archetypes, because the armor doesn't look the same on everybody. I use 3 relational nervous system archetypes to describe the default patterns I see most often. And I want you to really meet yours here because recognition is the first move towards change. The fire starter. The fire starter is the fight response in professional clothing. When a fire starter arrives home, the sympathetic nervous system hasn't stood down. Everything in the environment gets processed through a performance. Everything in the environment gets processed through a performance and a threat lens. The dishes, the kids' noise level, the question about dinner, the conversation someone else is in the middle of. Everything registers as something to fix, manage, or address efficiently. The fire starter isn't trying to be controlling. They're not trying to be unkind. Their neuroceptive system is just still scanning, still running the threat assessment. And in that state, connection feels like inefficiency. Tenderness feels like exposure. Slowing down feels like a loss of control. Over time, the people around the fire starter start to manage them. They get quieter. They stop bringing the small things. The texture of the relationships thin. And the fire starter, who loves these people desperately, has no idea why the closeness keeps receding. The island. The island is the freeze response, what Polyvagal Theory calls dorsal vagal state. And this is the profile I think is the most misunderstood and the most privately painful. The island arrives home and goes flat, quiet, present in body, completely unreachable in presence. They spent the entire day performing emotional availability for clients, for colleagues, for direct reports, for students, for patients. By the time they cross their own threshold, there's nothing left. The system has pulled the circuit breaker. And this shutdown, which from the inside feels like depletion, looks from the outside like indifference, like distance, like not caring. The island is lying awake at 2 a.m., genuinely confused about why the people closest to them feel hurt or abandoned. Because from inside the freeze, there's no awareness of how far away they've gone. Here's what I want every island to hear. You are not cold. You are not checked out by choice. You've been giving at a level that your nervous system was not designed to sustain without a recovery protocol. The freeze is not a character flaw. It's a biological response to a depleted system. But it still costs the people who love you. And that cost deserves attention. The unpredictable. The unpredictable is the fawn response come home to roost. And this one is particularly common in emotionally intelligent, high empathy people, coaches, therapists, teachers, managers, healthcare workers, anyone who has spent their professional life in service to other people's emotional states. The unpredictable fawned their way through the workday, said yes when they meant no, adjusted themselves to fit every room, read every dynamic, smoothed every rough edge, made themselves acceptable and agreeable and non-threatening to everyone who needed something from them. By the time they're home, the accumulated load is full. The nervous system's resources are depleted, and the smallest thing, a question, a mess, a need, tips the entire load. The reaction seems wildly out of proportion, because it is out of proportion to the moment, but it's not out of proportion to the day. It's the completion of everything that never got to complete, and it lands hardest on the people who feel safest, which is its own particular heartbreak. I want to say this clearly before we move into the protocol. None of these profiles make you a bad person. Not one of them. Every single one is a nervous system response that learned to do what it did in order to help you survive and function. The question is simply, is this still the response you want? Is this still what you want to bring home? Because you have more options than you know. Let's talk about what we actually do. This is the part where we move from understanding into practice. And this is where things change. I call this approach biological consent. It's the practice of intentionally signaling to your nervous system that the threat of the workday is complete before you cross the threshold. Not as a nice idea, not as a luxury, as a biological necessity. Because the nervous system responds to signals, not intentions. And if we want a different state on the other side of the door, we have to provide the biological input that creates it. The de-armoring protocol has 3 steps. You can do this in your car, on a walk from the train, in the parking spot. Anywhere between the professional world and the parking spot. Anywhere between the professional world and the home world. It takes under 5 minutes. Okay, step 1 is the shake. 30 seconds of vigorously physical movement. Your hands, your arms, your shoulders, your whole body if you have the space and the privacy. Shake it out. This is drawn directly from Dr. Peter Levine's somatic experiencing work, one of the most well-researched approaches to releasing stored stress activation. One of the most well-researched approaches to releasing stored stress activation in the body. Levine's research shows that the body's natural mechanism for completing the stress cycle is tremor and movement. Animals in the wild do this instinctively after a threat. They shake, the stress hormone discharges, and the nervous system resets. We learn to hold that movement still because shaking in a professional environment is not considered appropriate. We contain the activation, suppress the discharge, carry the unfinished cycle into the next hour, and the next, and the next. This shake is permission to do what your body has been waiting to do all day. Let it be a little undignified. Dignity is a ventral vagal signal, and we're building toward that, not starting from it. Step 2, the sight. Actively orient to 3 things in your environment that feel soft or safe. A tree, the color of the late afternoon sky, the texture of your steering wheel, something green, anything that registers as not a threat. The orienting response is one of the earliest and most fundamental safety signals in the nervous system. It's how a system in threat mode begins to update its assessments of the environment. When you orient to something soft, when you let your eyes actually land on something neutral or beautiful, you're feeding your neuroceptive system new data. You're saying, look, the environment has changed. Update the threat report. It sounds almost too simple. It's not too simple. It's a biological primitive that bypasses the analytical. It's a biological primitive that bypasses the analytical mind entirely. 3 things: soft, safe. That's the step. Step 3, the breath. 4 counts in through the nose, 8 counts out through the mouth. Slow, deliberate. Let the exhale be audible if it wants to. Do this 3 times. The extended exhale is the most direct. The vagus nerve is the main highway of the parasympathetic nervous system, and it's profoundly responsive to breathing patterns. When the exhale is significantly longer than the inhale, the ventral vagal state begins to come online. The social engagement system reactivates. The capacity for genuine presence and connection returns. 4 in, 8 out, 3 times. Feel the shoulders drop. Feel the jaw soften. Feel the room become slightly more real. That is biological consent. That is you deliberately telling your nervous system the threat is over. You can come home now. The people in there don't need you to perform. They just need you to arrive. I want to take a moment here and talk about what the practice builds over time, because I think we can underestimate the cumulative effect of consistent nervous system work. The first time you do this protocol, you might feel a small shift, maybe a slight softening, maybe just slightly less tight when you walk through the door. That's real, and it's enough to start. But here's what happens when you do this consistently. When you make this ritual your actual threshold practice day after day, your nervous system starts to recognize it. The shake, the sight, the breath. They become a transition signal. The system starts to anticipate the shift. And over time, the state change happens faster, goes deeper, and holds longer. This is neuroplasticity in its most practical sense. You're literally rewiring the default program. You're teaching your nervous system a new story about what happens when the workday ends. And the people in your life, they'll feel it. Not because you announce it. Not because you explain the science to them. Because your nervous system will start broadcasting something different when you walk through that door. And their nervous systems will receive it. This is co-regulation working for you instead of against you. Before I let you go, I want to name something. The reason this is hard for so many of us isn't a lack of love. It isn't a lack of desire to be present. It's that we were never taught the transition was a thing that required a protocol. We were handed the armor and taught to wear it brilliantly. And nobody mentioned that you needed to learn how to take it off. That's what this work is. Not fixing yourself. Not performing better. Updating the system. Teaching your nervous system that the version of you who survives the workday and the version of you who can actually love and be loved, those two versions don't have to be at war. They can learn to coexist. And the bridge between them is 5 minutes on the doorstep. If you want to understand what kind of armor you're wearing, your specific archetype, your default patterns under relational stress, and where those patterns came from, the Relational Nervous System Quiz will map it for you. It's free, and the link is in the show notes. And if you want to experience a full somatic reset in real time in a live container with me, the Stop the Spiral workshop is 60 minutes at $37. That's at mind-fusion.com/workshop. Tomorrow we're going into why your executive presence reads as danger to the people you love. Until then, take care of that nervous system. It's the only one you've got.